chord boot camp, I've been calling it. So let's just jump right into it. Obviously, all this stuff is written out, but I thought maybe rather than just handing you a sheet, I can kind of give you some ideas of where to get started with this stuff and how to practice it, how to start to get this stuff under your fingers. And so let's jump into it. So we've got, I've arranged these with the bass note on the low E string and the A string. So, and I think a goal for anybody starting to play jazz guitar, you want to have at least two voicings per chord type. So, so like say I have a G major 7th, I could also play the G up here. So again, like if you see kind of the red note there, that's the root. So which means whatever note is on that low E string, so if it's 3rd fret, that's a G major 7. And I have it labeled as a G major 7 because it's on the 3rd fret. But if I go up to the 5th fret, that's an A major 7, B major 7, C major 7, C sharp major 7, or a D flat major 7, so on and so forth. And then the same goes for the A string. So let's say find a G on the A string. So that would be 10th fret. Right there, it's on the 3rd fret. So 3rd fret of the A string is a C. So, hopefully that's clear enough right there. So let me get into the other chord types. But before I get super into it, I wanted to maybe just do a quick theory lesson here. I had a lesson earlier I was teaching on the cage system, so it's still left over. So real quick, if you don't know anything about the major scale, don't worry about it. We can pick that up later. But I'm going to just kind of talk through where these scale tones are coming from. The major scale, what am I doing? There we go. Let's start off simple. C major doesn't have a key signature. It's just all naturals. That makes life pretty easy, right? I like putting, there's a lot of ways to classify a major scale. Oh yeah, it's a little weird. There we go. Well, that's supposed to be like a rooftop. I guess I'm too close to the top here. I swear, it's humbling learning something new. And like me learning to film myself and doing this stuff, I just know I'm going to go back and just cringe at these. But it's kind of the price of admission. I got to do like 20 of these, and then maybe start hitting my stride. So thanks for being patient with me. We're learning together. Okay. These equal a half step. What does a half step mean? Well, for us in guitar terms, it means a fret. So each one of these frets is a half step. So I went out of focus there, see if it readjusts. At any rate, so if a fret is a half step, then logically we can say a whole step is 2 frets. Kind of a cool sound, a whole step, whole tone scale as they call it. Why am I saying all this? Well, there's many ways to talk about the major scale, and maybe I'll do, for my theory classes, I'll do a separate thing. But for our purposes here in jazz guitar, let's just say a major scale is anything that isn't a half step. So you got to memorize 3, 4, and 7, and 8. Everything else equals a whole step. Got to spell whole correctly. There we go. I promise, stick with me here. It's going to come back to chords, but I just want to kind of lay the foundation here. So let's go back to G major. So let's say this is our first note of the scale, right? So 1 to 2 is going to be a whole step. So that's going to be the second note, or I guess I wrote them down in C. So let's do C. So C, that's going to be up to D as a whole step, right? And then you go up another whole step. So 2 to 3. 3 to 4 is a half step. So there you go. And then 4 to 5. 5 to 6. 6 6 to 7, 7 to 8. And there's your last half step. Okay? We're going to need that scale later when we do chords, but I wanted to talk about that just to lay the foundation about the major scale. But I also wanted to talk about where these chords are coming from. So we're talking about shell voicings. I want to talk about where that comes from. So shell voicings. And like the name would suggest, a shell voicing is like, it's not the full fleshed out thing. It's just kind of like a shell, right? It's a partial thing about the chords, but with a small amount of notes, you can achieve a surprisingly full sound. So what are shell voicings? It's usually a root or one, if you want to like, and then thirds, threes, and sevens. You'll hear about jazz teachers talk about this stuff a lot, like aim for chord tones, thirds and sevens. Without getting super into that, they avoid the fifth. So here's some chord theory. Like a major seventh is a collection note where you take the first note of a scale, the third note, the fifth note, and the seventh note. So if I'm playing on a C major, 1, so that's E, G, so that's C, E, G, B. C, G, B. So if I get rid of the fifth, that gives us our voicing, our shell voicing. So let's go back to see if I can go split screen here. I'm going to try to up my game. Let's get a different thing here. Let's go to Jazz Chord Bootcamp. All right, so we were going back to our example here. If you notice, on these fretboards, you'll see a root. Let me see, get my cursor here so you can see it. You got a root, a seventh, and a third, right? So if I was in C major 7, so a C on the low E string is going to be the 8th fret. So that's a C, a B, and an E. I can also play a C7 down here. Notice there's no fifth. This will make more sense when we get to the other chords, but in general, a lot of times in jazz, we can get some pretty sophisticated chords where we're switching around the fifths, we're switching around a lot, altering a lot of notes. We even call them alterations. So I think the strength of a shell voicing is they, because it is a small amount of notes, they will work with a lot of different types of chords. So there you go. There's the foundation of that. Now, if I'm getting into a dominant seventh, and again, if your theory isn't up to snuff and none of this makes sense, just kind of let it wash over you. Don't worry about it. But, the nice thing is, after you've heard this, the next time you hear it won't be the first time you've heard it. So, C, E, G, B flat. So, if I'm going back to my scale, so I'm doing an A-shaped major scale here. By the way, I just did like a video series, like 5 videos on the, if you want to call that a series, 5 videos on the cage system. So check that out on the channel if you want to learn the scale that this is coming from. But this is pattern 2 A-shape. All right, so if I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there's my B. If I flat that, that gives me a dominant 7th. And that's, you can see this is exactly what happens. You see this shape from there to there, the 7th flattened. Let's go back to our other voicing. So if I want to keep it on a C major 7th, go to 8th fret. You see you have the 7th note. And what do you know? It's now flatted. Okay? And then we can continue on with this. Again, the 5th is not a problem of ours. See, we got a minor 7th. So I'm going to write out a minor 7th, and the next one here, sorry, hold on a second. The next chord type there's a couple names for it. You would call it a half diminished 7th or minor 7 flat 5. Those are pretty interchangeable names. what does that mean? 1, 3, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7. Sorry, 1, flat 3, 5, 7. I was getting a little cramped here. Oh well, sorry for my penmanship. But here's something I want you to consider. Actually, let me clear this out so I can make this a little bit clearer. Yeah, you can rewind the video if you want to see the other types. So something that's potentially confusing for people is like, why are there two chord types for that? Well, because, let's see, let me get minor 7. Would be 1, flat 3, 5, flat 7. Let's see, flat 5 would be 1, flat 3, flat 5. That's not a 5. Come on now. There we go, flat 7. Well, if you see, that would make a difference if we were doing a 4-note voicing, which on the next page there are. You can see the difference. But for our purposes in the shell voicing, these shapes will work over both. And so you kind of start to see the versatility of these shapes. So, so sometimes, let's say I'm playing with a piano player, and as you get out there and start playing tunes, you'll notice that the page will say one thing, but as you get experienced and start playing with experienced players, they will throw in different alterations. And that's kind of the fun is, if your ears develop, then you can kind of hear what they're doing and react to that, match them. It's kind of another form of communication musically. That's a lot of fun. But say you're not sure what the piano player is going to do, I will use shell voicings even to this day just to play it safe. So I just wanted you to see why there's a difference there, okay? Same deal with diminished 7th and minor 6th, and we have so on and so forth. So, I didn't want to get too bogged down with the theory, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, to finish that thought. Maybe I'll throw in like a theory boot camp handout I have for my beginner improv class in the description or something like that. But for now, I want to get back to just the chord voicings. And what are we going to do with this? So your first exercise you can do with this to get in there is I like going from left to right and then backwards. So I'll start, let's do 8 beats per chord. So 1, 6, 7, 8, go to dominant. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you can do this G major 6th if you want. Hopefully you can kind of see the logic is all these chords have one note difference between them. Back to the minor 7 or the flat 5. Back to dominant. And then back to major 7th. Alright, now let's do the same thing for C major. 1, 2, 3, C major. 5, 6, 7, 8. Switch to dominant. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. To minor. 5, 6. Then go to diminished 7th or minor 6. C major 6th. Go back to minor 6. C minor. C dominant 7. I know it says C7, but we call it dominant 7 to be more precise. C major 7. Okay, so that's a good first stop. Just to get them on your fingers. Stick around for the next video. I'm going to try to break these up into chunks so it's not like such a long lesson. So we'll call this installment 1. The next one, we're going to do a chord scale. So I'll see you on the next video. Here we go.